Hey Chaos crew, Jimmy Chaos here, back with the colorless cards of Streets of New Capenna. So that means the artifacts and the lands. We've already looked at all 5 of the monocolor cards, so now we're going to do the colorless, and in the last video we will finally get to the multicolor cards, which is where a lot of the flavor of the set is. But the artifacts and the lands have some pretty cool stuff too, so let's get into that. Alright, up first is Arc Spitter. For 1 mana, it's an equipment. Equipped creature has pay 1. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature that's blocking it, and it equips for 1. This seems interesting, because you can pump as much mana into this as needed to take out a blocker so that your creature survives combat, or if they've multi-blocked, you might get a couple of creatures. This makes blocking very difficult for your opponent, especially in the late game when you have a lot of mana to pour into this. It also feels like a card that could be kind of underwhelming a lot of the time too, if the board state just really isn't right and you really cannot afford to attack. Then this card's just going to sit there and do nothing. But if you're in a position where you can attack and trade up, like you can attack with a citizen token and anything they block with could get shot down. That, I guess you're not getting for a lot of damage. See, this is kind of I think this might be a bit of a trap card, I think. It's interesting. It has interesting potential. I look forward to trying it out for sure. I think it could be a trap, but otherwise it seems like it might be slightly above average. Alright, Brass Knuckles, a 4 mana equipment. When you cast this spell, copy it. Equipped creature has double strike as long as 2 or more equipment are attached to it. And equips for 1. Yeah, this seems like a fair bit of hoops to jump through just to get double strike. Though, like if they destroy one of these, then you can't get the double strike at all if you don't have another equipment in your deck. So you really need to make sure that you're running more than just Brass Knuckles so it's reliable, but it seems kind of wonky and slow at 4 mana, so I think this is kind of mediocre and probably not great. Cement Shoes, 1 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has, at the beginning of your end step, tap this creature. Equipped creature does not untap during its controller's untap step and equips for 2. Yeah, this isn't good at all. Getting the +3/+3 for 1 potential combat isn't really worth the downside of having to keep moving this around to be able to untap the creatures you need to untap. So this really just slows your board down, and the upside is really not worth it. Yeah, this card just seems bad. Yeah, if you could attach it to your opponent's creatures, that would be great, but you can't equip their creatures, unfortunately. So yeah, this just seems really bad. Flavorful card, but really, really bad. Chrome Cat, 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature, and it's a cat. And when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. Yeah, it's a little bit like the rate's okay, I guess, for a 3/2, especially when you put a scry on it. So if you're in a deck that's a lot of different colors, which this format is definitely a format that can handle a lot of different colors, having a 3-drop that's just any colors of mana is nice. So that way you can consistently hit something on turn 3, and the scry helps you fix or dig for a piece that you need. So overall, I'd say, yeah, this is playable. It's nothing amazing, but it's definitely a playable card in heavy colored decks. If you're playing more like 2 colors, then you probably don't need it. If you're playing 3 or more colors, yeah, this seems like a playable card. Getaway Car, 3 mana for a vehicle. It's a rare. It's a 4/3, has haste. Whenever Getaway Car attacks or blocks, return up to 1 target creature that crewed it this turn to its owner's hand, and it crews for 1. Okay, so you have to be careful not to crew with your citizen tokens, or else you just lose them. There are creatures that have some pretty good ETB effects, so bouncing them back to your hand to get more counters on other creatures, more connives, like there's lots of different things you can get from that. It seems pretty good. 3 mana for 4/3, yeah, it's above rate, and it has haste, so you can get in right away. Yeah, it's a nice aggressive vehicle here. I definitely think this would be playable in limited, and would probably perform pretty well, especially if you've got a lot of creatures that have ETB effects. Gilded Pinions, 2 mana for an equipment. When Gilded Pinions enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Equipped creature has flying and equips for 2. Yeah, we've seen equipments like this in bunch of different sets where your creature just gets flying for a reasonable cost, but it never really works out to being that great. Flying isn't super prevalent in this format to the point where you need this in, say, red or green. But overall, this is just, yeah, unplayable. It doesn't do enough. Halo's Scarab, 2 mana for a 2/1, and you can pay 2 and exile it from your graveyard for a treasure token. Alright, so if you're in a deck that's playing 3 or more colors, this goes up in value a lot. 2 colors or less, don't play this. You don't need the treasure that badly, unless you have some kind of massive treasure payoff. But if you're playing 3 or more colors, this is a nice 2-drop you can always play on 2. It trades for most 2-drops, and then later on you can use it to fix your mana. So I'd say this is a about average playable card in a limited format. Alright, Luxior Gyada's Gift. 1 mana, a legendary artifact, equipment, and it's a mythic. Equip creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. Equip permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. Loyalty abilities can still be activated. Equip planeswalker for 1 or equip 3. Alright, so if you get a planeswalker in your limited pool, you could turn it into a creature, which makes it so they can't attack it. So it's a little bit different for them to remove. They could just use a removal spell like a murder at that point. You have to be careful. But this is a creature that will keep growing because every time you plus the loyalty ability, you're going to get more +1/+1 trigger or buff from this. And it only equips for 1 mana and costs 1 to cast. So if you have a planeswalker, I would say this is worth running. If you don't have one in your limited pool, most creatures will only get 1 counter on them. So for this to be 1 mana, 3 to equip, target creature gets +1/+1, not the best. If you're capable of consistently getting a creature with, say, 2 or 3 counters on it, then this is a bit more reasonable. But again, it's still kind of just mediocre equipment. You have to have that creature potentially, or a certain spell that helps you get to that state. So you're kind of reliant on other cards for really to do much of anything. So I would say in that case, maybe you don't bring it in. In terms of constructed, though, there is a potential of this seeing some modern play with the Devoted Druid combo, because every time it gets the -1/-1 counter, this gives it +1/+1, which counteracts it, so you just get infinite mana on the spot. And this is just basically another copy of Vizier Remedies for them. So we'll definitely see that deck experimenting with this, and whether or not it'll bring that deck kind of back to life or not remains to be seen. Alright, Ominous Parcel, 1 mana artifact. You can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land card. Reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle. Pay 5, tap and sack it. It deals 4 damage to target creature. Okay, so again, 2-color deck, you don't need the land fixing really. 3 colors or more, you can consider this depending on what other fixing you have. There's definitely better fixing in the format, but if you didn't get any of that, it's worth considering. It's nice that late game it has the option of becoming a removal spell, and 4 damage in this format seems pretty okay. There's not terribly many creatures with more than 4 toughness. There are a few, but they're not a lot as common as they have been in other formats. So 4 is pretty relevant. But again, there's probably better removal, or if you're desperate for removal, this is a backup removal. So it's like a B tier removal at best. Yeah, so on the whole, I would say it's slightly above average. You're not happy to play it, but it's if you're in a kind of a desperate situation for fixing or interaction, it's worth considering. Paragon of Modernity, 4 mana for an Angel Warrior. It's a 2/2, it has flying, and has pay 3. Paragon of Modernity gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If exactly 3 colors of mana were spent to activate this ability, put a +1/+1 counter on it instead. This format is definitely wide open for playing 3 or more colors. So getting that extra trigger for a +1/+1 counter is easy. So this is a 4 mana 2/2 flyer for 3 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on it effectively if you're in a 3 or more color deck. And this is all generic mana, so it's easy to cast, easy to activate. Yeah, if you're in 3 or more colors, this card is absolutely an absolute powerhouse. If you're in 2 or less, obviously this card does not enough for 4 mana. It would just be a 2/2 flyer, so you're not going to want to run it there. But in 3 or more colors, this card is absolutely powerful and really strong. You'd play multiple copies. Quick Draw Dagger, 3 mana equipment, has flash. When Quick Draw Dagger enters the battlefield, attach it to a target creature you control. That creature gains first strike until end of turn. The equipped creature gets +1/+1, and it equips for 1. Okay, so for 3 mana, you give a creature +1/+1 and first strike, and the +1/+1 sticks around. It's a little bit expensive for that effect, but if you're desperate for interaction to try and be able to steal a combat, then this is an okay card, I would say, but hopefully you have better options. If you play this at sorcery speed and pay the equip cost, it's really kind of useless. You really need to get the flash ability off. So overall, I'd say this is, very mediocre, slightly below average. No, I'd say it's probably about average. It's just not playable, really. Scuttling Butler, 3 mana for a construct. It's a 4/1. At beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 2 or more multicolored permanents, Scuttling Butler gains double strike until end of turn. Okay, so if you're in a 3 or more color deck, this seems like a reasonable 3-drop to play. You're guaranteed to be able to cast it regardless of which colors you have. And then as you play your other gold permanents or multicolored permanents, then you get more upside with this. It'll deal 4 damage at first strike, so its 1 toughness is less of a problem because it'll probably kill most things before they even have a chance to hit it. And if they can't block this, it just gets them for 8. So overall, I'd say this is probably, it seems a little bit above average. It seems playable, probably just 1 copy. I don't think you'd really benefit from having 2 copies necessarily. Though I guess having 2 4/1 double strikers is pretty strong. Yeah, we'll have to see, but this looks interesting for multicolor decks. Suspicious Bookcase, 2 mana for a 0/4 wall, has defender and 3 target creature can't be blocked this turn. Yeah, that's not bad. This is a very grindy format, so making a creature unblockable seems okay. And a 2 mana 0/4 defender, that's going to sit there and block for several turns easily, and then maybe on turn 4 or 5 you have to consider trading it. But overall, we've seen this card many times before as well, and it usually is only okay. You never are happy to play it, but you will play it if you need another creature, and this is all you've got really to choose from. Unlicensed Hearse, a 2 mana vehicle. It's a rare. You can tap it, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Unlicensed Hearse's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards exiled with it, and it accrues for 2. So this is a very interesting piece of graveyard hate. You get to choose the 2 cards, and then this slowly grows over time. So if we look at Soul Guide Lantern, which is a very common piece of graveyard hate that's used right now, it gets 1 card right away and eventually their whole graveyard. This can sit there and just pick away their graveyard slowly over time. So it's hard to say if this will be used in replace of Soul Guide Lantern. I don't think so, because of the being able to get rid of their entire graveyard all at once is pretty crucial. Yeah, because if you just draw this when they already have like 10 cards, you can get rid of 2 key cards, but if it's like a Murktide deck, then this is not going to work. Yeah, so I don't think this is going to see too much play in any kind of constructed, because there's better graveyard answers out there, and it becoming a big creature and crewing just isn't enough. I'm sorry, in terms of limited, yeah, people's cards go to their graveyard. You can turn them into power and toughness for this card, and it prevents them from bringing them back if they happen to have any effects. We did see that one guy who can blitz from the graveyard, so this would get rid of him in a limited environment. And it accrues for 2, which is very reasonable. So yeah, in limited, I think this would actually work out pretty well. You're not going to really be able to do much with it until probably the mid to late game, but this is a slow format, so I think this card would actually have a very strong position in it, in the limited for this. Okay, now we have reached the lands. So there's 2 cycles of lands. This is one of the first cycle, which is the lands that you can pay 4 mana to sacrifice and draw cards. So this is Botanical Plaza. Enters the battlefield, taps for a green or a white. Taps for 2, a green or a white, sack it, draw a card. So these are neat for limited. It's just a good way late game to sack off a land, draw some cards, try and get some more spells so you can affect the board. And they're reasonable fixing. So yeah, good dual lands for limited. All right, and here's one of the other cycle. This is the Broker's Hideout. When Broker's Hideout enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic forest, plains, or island card. Put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, and you gain 1 life. So there's a whole cycle of these fetch lands that gain you a life. They only get basic lands. So in terms of constructed, I'm sure we'll see these get played just because commander players will want to be able to fetch basic lands. Those in commander who run basic lands, I'm sure there's some decks that don't. And then in standard, this is just pretty good fixing. In terms of limited though, this is really strong. This is why the format can be a 3+ color format, is largely because of these lands, as well as some of the gold creatures we'll get into the next one. So yeah, no, these are pretty cool. I like the design on them, and it's kind of cool how it makes you just sack it right away. So there's none of that play Evolving Wilds, sack it on your end step, slowing down the whole pace of the game kind of nonsense. It's just go get your land now. So here's the next one, the Karabetti Courtyard, and this one gets you a mountain, forest, or plains. And okay, here's another cycle. So there's 3 cycles of lands in this set, which is cool. This is the Triome cycle, so they're completing the Triomes from Ikoria. They didn't call these ones Triomes in the names, but that's what they are, because they're 3 types of lands, and they cycle for 3, just like the Triomes from Ikoria. All right, so this is Jetmeer's Garden. It's a mountain, forest, plains. The taps are red, green, or a white. And again, you can cycle it for 3. Yeah, these are great cards. Great fixing. Commander players love these things. You know, well, those in Commander who are running 3 or more colors, obviously. Yeah, these see modern play. These see standard play. So yeah, they'll see a lot of play. Maestro's Theater. Okay, this one gets you a swamp, island, or a mountain. All right, and this is the Obscura Storefront. It gets you a plains, island, or a swamp. And this is the Racer's Ring. It's the red-green draw land. And then we have Raffine's Tower here, which is the plains, island, swamp triome. Pretty cool artwork on that one. It kind of looks like Gotham City. And here's Riveteer's Outlook, has swamp, mountain, or forest. That's a pretty cool cavernous looking area. That looks neat. Skybridge Towers, this is the blue-white drawland. Spara's Headquarters is the forest, plains, and island triome. Tramway Station is the black-red drawland. Waterfront District is the blue-black drawland. Xander's Lounge is the island, swamp, mountain triome. And Zitara's Proving Ground is the swamp, mountain, forest triome. And it looks like it's a boxing ring. That's pretty interesting that Magic the Gathering now has a land that's a boxing ring. All right, and that ends all of the colorless and lands cards. So yeah, overall the equipment in the set, kind of mediocre, especially compared to Neon Dynasty, but hey, they can't keep repeating themselves with Earth and equipments being super relevant or good and limited, or else, you know, it'd get kind of boring. Overall though, the lands are really cool. I really like that we have a heavy multicolored format. It's been a while since we've had one. I think Hans was the last one. Yeah, it's just gonna be really fun. I like playing lots of different colors, so it looks like it's gonna be a really fun format to grind out and try and get to Mythic next. I guess it'll be next month is when that kind of starts. End of this month. At any rate, thank you for watching. It's been a lot of fun reviewing all these cards. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you think about these cards in the colorless here. And I'll see you in the next one.